If you're wondering what time it is, it's time for another video. A video in which I talk about conventions and big news about a project coming up with myself and other cartoon veterans. Veteran cartoonist. I guess we're a little bit of both. Butter, play me to the desk. All right, Butter, play me to the desk. Come on, play me to the desk. Dude.
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl.
Back in February, I made a video in which I said that I would not be making as many videos due to changes at my day job. And I thought, not so bad, that was just a few weeks ago. Then I uploaded my Book 3 unboxing video and was shocked to discover that, no, that was 2 months ago. So appropriately mortified, I figured I'd better make another video, even if it is a short one, but there actually is a lot of news to catch up on. So first of all, I had a fairly successful Gem State ComiCon this year. It wasn't as lucrative as last year, but I had a few things working against me this time around. Last year, I was partnered with Pete Barlow of G.I. Low, so there was the two of us sharing one table, which made everything look like we were stuffed to the gills with a variety of cool stuff. This year, I was a one-man band, and while I think my stuff is pretty compelling, it always looks better when you have a lot of variety available. Secondly, Book 3 didn't arrive in time, and that was due to a variety of factors with getting things to the printer, both in time and in correct format, which I fumbled. I had more than a couple people come up to me asking specifically to see if the new book had dropped, and I had to admit that at that time, it was still in the back of a UPS truck somewhere in Provo. Finally, in 2022, so previous year, we were seeing the last of the COVID restrictions lifting, and a lot of people still had bank accounts full of money that they'd saved because places like restaurants, bars, and theaters were either closed or severely limiting their capacity. Now remember, this was before the big inflation spike kicked off, so people had money. Now that gas costs about a kidney a gallon, folks are much more guarded about where they're going to toss their cash. Still, Comic-Con was a good experience, and I will go again next year, so stay tuned as the calendar comes around. Now, as for my next convention appearance, I will be at Boise Comics Arts Festival from September 29th to October 30th. This will be in Julia Davis Park, right in front of the zoo in Boise, Idaho. Last year's convention took place inside the zoo, and technically this year's convention will also take place inside the zoo. But there will be an artist's alley outside at the entrance of the zoo in the park, and I chose to be stationed there. You see, last year the zoo was a great venue. It was interesting, it was creative, but Zoo Boise is spread out, and there's these little zoological zones representing different continents. And a lot of people didn't know that some zones existed, and in fact I ended up in a fairly low-traffic zone that was bypassed by a lot of people. A couple years ago, Boise Comics Arts Festival switched to an outdoor theme, which is really nice in many ways, but this was the second year that the convention had been spread out in an outdoor venue, and vendors tend to get tucked away in little niches that are overlooked by the public, even people who knew I was there and were specifically looking for me. I'm going to take a chance and position myself at the entrance to the zoo this year and hope that the bottleneck effect will give me a lot of traffic. And the next news is, of course, Book 3 finally arrived, and it is available for sale in my Ko-Fi shop, link in the description below, so go there and pick that up if you're interested. This issue has fan art by Mark Baker of Private Murphy's Law, as well as Neil Caput of We Are the Wirecats. People that are into military comics may recognize Mark Baker and Private Murphy's Law, which was a comic that, in my opinion, kind of kicked off the most recent wave of cartoonist veterans, military members who do their own comics. This was years before Bohica Blues and Terminal Lance, and Mark Baker has been at it for a long time, which leads me into the next big piece of news. I've recently been in contact with Mark Baker, and he has been collecting stories from veterans and putting these stories in comic form. These aren't long biographies. These are interesting little tales of service life. Some are in war, some are not. These are stories from basic training, stories from home station National Guard and Reserve units, and also tales of interesting things that happened in the global war on terrorism. These are little vignettes that can be boiled down to maybe 2 to 4 pages and tell an interesting day-in-the-life type story of veterans from around the military. Now, Mark already has a bunch of these stories done, and he's willing to let me put one of these in Bohica Blues book number 4, which is about 75% finished already, and I will release that as a sort of appetizer for the larger project. We're going to be working with other veteran cartoonists to expand the footprint of these stories and release an entire comic book of these stories from regular veterans. We're looking at maybe 70 to 80 pages of comic with veteran stories. And again, these aren't stories of people earning congressional medals of honor. Those guys are guaranteed to get their stories told. These are regular veterans that were just showing up and doing their jobs and had something interesting or unusual happen to them one day. So stay tuned for this. We're going to do a Kickstarter, so watch out for that. And of course, I'll do a video for that. And in the meantime, I'd also like to welcome all the new subscribers that have shown up. This tiny little channel is growing a bit, and hopefully we can keep that momentum up with more interesting content. Anyhow, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. The video is pretty much over, so you can tell your captors to start loosening the ropes so that you can hit the like and subscribe stuff. And of course, check out that cool description below where I link to all my socials and shops. Consider supporting me on Patreon, where 100% of all proceeds go to the creation of more comics. And as always, remember to support an independent comics creator out there. Doesn't have to be me, but I'd certainly appreciate it. But anyone that takes time out of their life to create something that makes your day more fun, then give them a like, a subscribe, buy a product, or just give them a message of support. It costs nothing, but means a lot. And until next time, life is more interesting when you keep things random.